The great alien court was cold and dark, the walls made of black stone that seemed to drink the light. Tall banners hung from the ceiling, showing the symbols of the ruling council. And the air felt heavy with the weight of judgment. At the center stood a small figure, an alien girl with pale skin and silver eyes. Her clothes torn and stained, her hands bound in front of her with glowing chains. Her head was bowed, but her eyes held a quiet fire. The guards on either side of her stood tall, with weapons in their hands, their armor shining like glass in the dim light. The crowd that had gathered to watch whispered among themselves, but none dared speak too loud, for fear of drawing the attention of the judges, who sat high above on their stone thrones. The oldest judge spoke in a deep voice that echoed through the hall, saying she was guilty of breaking the sacred law, guilty of speaking against the council, guilty of spreading forbidden truth, and for these crimes she would be sent to the frozen wasteland of Kor, there to remain until the cold claimed her life. The sentence was exile until death. The guards moved to take her away, their grip firm on her arms, her chains glowing brighter as they dragged her toward the exit. Her feet, scraping across the floor in the shadows near the back, stood a human officer, his uniform dark and marked with the crest of the Terran fleet. His name was Captain Rion, and his eyes followed every movement of the girl as she was led past the crowd. He had never seen her before, yet something in her face caught at his heart. There was no fear there, only a fierce and silent defiance, as if even the weight of death could not crush her will. The people around him turned their eyes away, some in pity, some in cold approval, but he could not. He kept watching until she was almost gone from sight. Then he stepped forward, his boots ringing on the stone floor. One of the alien guards blocked his way with a spear, telling him, in a sharp voice, that this was not his concern, that humans had no voice in the judgment of the council. But Rian did not step back. Instead, he asked what crime could be so great that it deserved death in the cold. The guard only sneered and said the council's word was law and no one may question it. The girl glanced at Rian for a brief moment, her silver eyes meeting his, and in that moment he knew he would not forget her, nor would he stand by and watch her die. The guards took her to a shuttle waiting outside the great hall. The sky above was a pale green, clouds twisting like smoke. The shuttle's engines roared as it rose into the air, carrying her toward the stars. Rian watched it go from the steps of the court, his fists clenched. The other human officers who had come with him stood nearby, one of them telling him to leave it alone, that this was alien law and not their fight, that getting involved could mean death for him too, but he could not let the thought go. The image of her being dragged away was burned into his mind. He remembered the way she had looked at him, not with pleading, but with a challenge, as if daring him to do something that night. Rian sat alone in the human quarters of the alien capital. The city lights spread out below his window, ships coming and going in the dark sky. He could not sleep. The silence was heavy, and in it he could hear again the sound of the judge's voice, the sound of the chains, the sound of the shuttle. Leaving, he rose from his chair and walked to the small hangar where his personal craft was kept. The guards there nodded as he passed, thinking nothing of it, for humans sometimes took night flights. He climbed into the cockpit, the controls lighting under his hands, the engines humming softly. He took a deep breath and thought of the frozen world called Kor, a place of endless snow and storms, where no one could live for long without shelter. He thought of her being left there to die alone in the dark. As the ship lifted from the ground, he set a course for the edge of alien space, his heart beating fast. He knew the risk. If he was caught taking her, it would mean more than just the anger of the council. It could mean war between humans and the alien rulers. But he pushed the thought aside, his mind fixed only on reaching her before it was too late. The stars stretched before him, bright and cold, and somewhere among them was the frozen planet where she had been sent, alone, chained, and waiting for the end. He gripped the controls tighter, whispering to himself that no one deserved to be left to die like that, not while he could still fight to change it. The frozen world of Kor hung in the dark like a dead star, its surface white and endless. Storms swirling over the land like giant living things, the air thin and sharp, the cold deep enough to steal the breath from any living being. The shuttle that carried the alien girl broke through the clouds, its hull glowing faintly from the heat of entry. Yet even that warmth was swallowed quickly by the winter below. The pilots guided the craft toward a flat stretch of ice where no shelter stood. The girl sat in the back, her chains now dim, her breath misting in the frigid air that leaked through the old walls. She did not beg, she did not cry. She simply watched the frozen horizon with steady eyes. The guards shoved her toward the hatch. their voices muffled by the wind outside. The ramp opened, and a wave of icy air rushed in, cutting into her skin like knives. They pushed her out onto the ice. Her thin clothes, no shield against the killing cold. She stumbled, but did not fall. The shuttle engines roared once more, lifting the craft away and leaving her standing alone in the wasteland, her silver eyes following the ship until it vanished. Into the clouds far above the planet Captain Rion's small ship slid out of faster travel, the planet filling his view, white and endless. Even from space, the storms were visible, twisting across the land like claws. His scanner picked up the faint heat of the shuttle as it rose from the surface and turned toward alien space. He locked onto its course, but his mind was already on the ground below. His hands moved quickly over the controls, bringing his ship into the thin atmosphere. Alarms warned of dangerous winds and freezing air, the hull shaking as the storm reached for him. But he ignored them, guiding the craft down through the clouds. The snow was so thick that even the sensors struggled to see through it. Every gust, rocking the ship harder, he set the landing gear on a ridge of ice. The skids digging into the surface, the wind howling around him, his visor fogging from the sudden drop in temperature. He grabbed a heavy cloak and a small heating pack from the storage bay. Stepping into the storm, the cold hit him like a wall, biting into his skin through the fabric. Snow swirling so fast it was hard to tell where the ground ended and the air began. His boots sank deep with each step, his breath coming in sharp bursts. He kept his eyes on the tracker strapped to his wrist, the faint signal of the girl flickering. As the storm pushed against the device, it took him nearly an hour to reach her location, the signal growing weaker with each minute. At last, through the white haze, he saw a shape on the ice, small and unmoving. He ran the last few meters, kneeling beside her, her lips blue, her skin pale, her chains cold as stone, her body trembling in the grip of the frozen air. He pressed the heating pack to her chest, wrapping the cloak around her, his voice rough as he told her to hold on. Her eyes opened slowly, silver and clouded, yet she seemed to know who he was. Her hand reached for his, gripping it with surprising strength for one so close to the edge. He lifted her in his arms, the wind tearing at them both, the snow rising past his knees as he struggled back toward the ship, his muscles burning, each step a fight. Behind him, the storm grew worse, the air so cold it felt like glass breaking inside his lungs. The ship's outline appeared through the white, a shadow against the storm. He stumbled up the ramp and sealed the hatch. The sudden stillness, almost shocking after the roar outside. He laid her on the small bunk and pulled the emergency blanket over her, the ship's heaters roaring to life. He cut the engines free from the ice and rose back into the air, the planet falling away beneath them, but safety did not last long. The unit crackled to life with a harsh alien voice demanding he identified himself and state his reason for being on core. He ignored the call and pushed the engines harder, breaking through the last of the atmosphere into the black of space. Ahead, the stars stretched in every direction, but behind them the alien patrol ships were already on the move, their sensors no doubt tracking the stolen heat signature from the girl's body. She stirred on the bunk, her voice a faint whisper, in a language he did not know, her eyes meeting his, with something like trust, yet also warning. He did not need to understand the words to know she was telling him they were not safe. He glanced at the radar, 3 blips closing in from the rear. Moving fast, his fingers flew over the controls, setting a course away from alien space, weaving through the debris that floated near the edge of the old war zone. Chunks of metal and frozen wreckage drifting in silent darkness. The alien ships followed, their weapons charging. The girl reached for the edge of the console, pointing toward the shadows between the wrecks. Her meaning clear, a place to hide. He angled the ship into the cover, the wreckage passing close enough to scrape the hull. The alien scanners sweeping the area, passing dangerously near. His breath held as he waited for them to give up, but deep down he knew this was only the start. The moment he chose to land on core, he had crossed a line no human was meant to cross, and the alien law would not forget. The wreckage drifted in the dark like the bones of dead giants, broken ships turning slowly in the silent cold. Captain Rion's small craft slid between the shattered hulls, the metal scraping close enough to make the frame shudder. Behind him, the alien patrol ships surged with sharp scanning beams, thin white light cutting through the black. The girl lay on the bunk, her silver eyes half open, her breath steadier now, under the warmth of the ship. Yet she did not look away from him, her gaze fixed, as if she could see the danger even without the sensors. Rian kept his hands steady on the controls, his eyes moving between the wreckage ahead and the radar showing 3 enemy blips. Drawing closer, the first beam passed over them, lighting the cockpit for a heartbeat. Rion killed the engines and drifted, letting the silence wrap around them. The alien ships slowed, their scans sweeping. A voice crackled over the come again in the alien tongue, demanding identification. Warning that hiding was a crime that would bring death. Rion did not answer, his jaw tight. The girl whispered something, her tone urgent, her voice carrying a warning he could feel even if he could not understand the words. One of the alien ships moved closer, its shadow filling the view. Rion's hand hovered over the throttle, ready to burst forward if they fired. The beam swept. Again, catching the nose of his ship, alarms blaring as the sensors locked on. The enemy guns charging with a low hum that cut through the silence. Rion slammed the throttle forward, the engines roaring to life, the small craft shooting from behind the wreckage into open space. The alien ships reacted at once, breaking formation to chase. Red bolts of plasma cutting across the dark, one shot grazing the rear shield and sending a tremor through the hull. The girl gripped the edge of the bunk. Her eyes locked on the view beyond the glass. Rion twisted the ship into a tight roll, diving toward a spinning section of an old battleship. The alien fire smashing into the metal as he darted past. The chase pushed them toward the edge of the old war zone, where the wrecks thinned and the black stretched wide and empty. Rion knew that in open space they would have no cover. The alien ships faster and better armed. He needed a way to turn the fight, scanning the map for anything. His eyes caught the faint signal of a gas cloud ahead, thick with ion storms that could scramble sensors. Dangerous to fly through, but more dangerous to stay here. He angled toward it without a word, the girl's eyes widening as if she knew what lay inside, her lips forming words he could not understand. Yet her voice carried a warning, like a sharp wind that alien ships followed, their weapons firing in bursts that lit the dark, one bolt striking close enough to spin his ship sideways. Rion fought the controls, forcing the craft back on course. The gas cloud now filling the view, a rolling wall of green and gold light twisting like a living thing. Static already sparking along the hull, the sensors flickering. He pushed the engines harder, diving into the storm. Lightning dancing across the cockpit glass, the alien ships hesitating at the edge, then following with caution, the storm swallowing them. All inside the cloud the light flashed so bright it burned after images into Rion's eyes. The controls growing sluggish, alarms screaming as the power flickered. The girl slid from the bunk to the co-pilot's seat, her hands moving to the secondary console with practiced skill. She pressed a sequence that dimmed the ship's energy output, making them almost invisible to scanners. Rion glanced at her, surprised, but she only nodded toward the radar. The enemy signals now scattered and weak, one patrol ship vanishing completely as the storm ripped it apart. The other two moving slower, their formation broken. Rion used the cover to weave through the glowing clouds, the lightning crackling against the shields, his mind working through the risk. They could not stay here long, or the storm would kill them too. He spotted a thin gap in the cloud ahead where the green faded into open black. Aiming for it, the ship shuddering with each strike of energy. The girl watching both the radar and the storm, her expression calm but focused, as if she had done this before. The last alien ship still tracking them slowly, its signal faint but not gone. They broke free of the storm with a burst of speed. The black of space stretching ahead, the stars sharp and cold. The girl leaned back, her breath unsteady but her eyes still on the radar. Rion checked the scanners, the enemy ship still behind them but losing distance. He set a course deeper into unclaimed space, away from both human and alien patrols, knowing it would give them time but not safety. The girl reached into the pocket of her torn cloak and pulled out a small metallic device, no bigger than his palm, holding it out to him without a word. Rion took it, feeling its weight. Strange symbols carved into the surface, the metal warm despite the cold around them. Before he could ask what it was, the cum came alive again, not with alien voices, but with a faint human signal, the voice urgent, warning of heavy alien movement in nearby sectors, telling all ships to avoid contact. Rion shut it off without answering, his eyes on the device in his hand. The girl watching him with a look that said the story of her exile was far more than the Council's judgment, far more than he had guessed, and the chase they had just survived was only the beginning of something much greater. Asterisk, the black between the stars was calm for only a short while. The hum of the engines, steady, the girl sitting in the co-pilot's seat with the metallic device still in her hand. Captain Rion watching the radar as the faint signal of the alien ship faded, yet he knew it was not gone. Hunters like these did not turn back. They waited, they tracked, and they struck, when the prey was certain it had escaped. The girl turned the device over slowly, as if weighing whether to speak, her eyes catching the dim light from the console. Rian could see she was thinking of something heavy, something that pressed against her, just as the cold weight of the chase pressed against him. A faint pulse appeared on the radar. Then another, more signals waking in the far edges of the screen, alien ships spreading in a net to cut off all paths. Rian tightened his grip on the controls, changing course toward the rim of unclaimed space. The girl glanced at the radar, and then at him, speaking quickly in her own language, her voice sharp and tense. He could not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were not just chasing, they were hunting. And soon there would be no way out. He pushed the engines to a higher burn, the hull trembling from the strain, stars blurring as they raced past. Behind them, the signals grew closer, the net drawing in. He thought of slipping back into the ion storm, but the girl shook her head hard, pointing forward, her other hand tightening on the device as if it was the only thing that mattered. She motioned toward a small sector ahead, marked on his map with no name. Only a warning code in both human and alien text. Restricted, dangerous, and avoided by Orion. Hesitated, but only for a breath. Whatever was ahead had to be better than waiting for the alien fleet to close in. He angled the ship toward it, the alien signals shifting to match his new path. Their formation tightening, the first volley of plasma fire streaking past the cockpit, lighting the dark in blinding red. The girl flinched but did not look away from the window, her silver eyes sharp and alert. Rian rolled the ship into a spin, dodging the second burst, the shields humming under the strain, alarms beginning to sound. They darted between small clusters of drifting rock, the fragments from long-dead moons spinning in lazy arcs, each pass forcing the alien ships to split their formation, for only a moment before closing again. The girl leaned over the console, tapping a sequence that brought up a local scan of the space ahead. The restricted zone was a deep scar in the star map, filled with unstable gravity wells and drifting wrecks, the kind of place no sane pilot would enter without a death wish. Rian looked at it, and then at the girl, her nod firm. No fear in her eyes. The alien ships fired again, one bolt grazing the left wing, making the ship lurch hard, sparks jumping from a console, the smell of burnt wiring filling the air. Rian gritted his teeth and shoved the throttle forward. The restricted zone growing closer, the sensors warning of violent gravitational shifts and magnetic storms. Ahead, the darkness seemed thicker, the stars bending strangely as if the space itself was broken. The girl braced herself against the seat as they crossed the boundary, the first pull of a gravity well dragging at the ship like a giant invisible hand. Inside the zone, the chase became chaos. The alien ships forced to spread wide to avoid being caught by the hidden traps in the space. Rian used the twisting currents to sling his ship forward, each shift pulling them faster, his hands steady despite the wild movements, the girl's eyes darting between the radar and the strange shapes outside. Massive fragments of broken stations and ships long abandoned, their surfaces scarred by battles lost to time. The silence between the creaks of the hull, heavy with the sense that they were moving through a graveyard. A sharp alarm broke the quiet. One alien ship had managed to follow them closely, weaving through the hazards with skill, its weapons charging for a shot. Rian banked hard to the left, pulling the ship between two huge fragments of an old carrier. The alien ship followed, its hull scraping the metal, sparks scattering into the void. The girl gripped the device and tapped it once, a small hum filling the cockpit. Rian felt the controls lighten, the engines responding faster, as if the ship itself had been freed from the pull of the strange gravity. They shot forward, leaving the alien ship behind. As it became trapped in the shifting currents, the radar still showed more signals outside the zone, waiting for them to emerge. Rian slowed the ship just enough to hide behind a drifting hulk of metal, its shadow large enough to cover them from most scans. He shut down non-essential systems, the hum of the engines fading into silence. The girl looked at him, and then at the device, speaking in a softer voice now, still in her language, her tone heavy with meaning. Rian understood enough to know she was telling him the device was the reason for her exile, the reason the aliens would not stop, and the reason she could never go back outside. The wreckage shifted slowly, the alien fleet moving like predators in the dark. Rian kept his eyes on the radar, his mind already working through the next move. He had no orders for this, no mission briefing, only the choice to keep running or to turn and fight. And as he looked at the girl holding the device like a piece of her own soul, he knew the choice had already been made the moment he stepped forward in that cold alien cord. The wreck they hid behind drifted in slow silence, its surface blackened and torn from battles no one remembered. Inside the cockpit, the dim glow From the console lit the faces of Captain Rion and the alien girl, her silver eyes fixed on the device in her hands, as if it might vanish if she looked away for even a moment. The radar showed the alien fleet still circling the edge of the restricted zone, their formation patient and wide, a net waiting for them to try to leave. Rion kept his voice low, though there was no sound but the faint hum of the life support. He asked her in human tongue what the device was, but she shook her head slowly. The meaning clear, even without words. It was not something she could explain. With a few simple lines, it was something that would need time, and perhaps trust. And both were running short. She leaned closer, her voice soft, speaking in her own language, each word carrying a rhythm that felt old and heavy. She traced her fingers over the strange symbols carved into the metal, pointing to one mark and then another, as if showing a map no one else could read. Rion could not understand, but he watched carefully, seeing the way her expression changed with each touch, sometimes sharp with anger, sometimes shadowed with sorrow. She paused and met his eyes, pressing the device into his hands. It was warm, heavier than it looked, and as he held it, the symbols seemed to hum faintly under his skin. She made a gesture toward the stars beyond the cockpit glass, a wide arc as if pointing not to one place but to many. Then she tapped the console, bringing up the star map, her fingers moving quickly to highlight 3 distant sectors, all marked as high security in alien records. Rian frowned. He knew those areas. They were closed to all ships, human or alien, officially said to be unsafe due to radiation storms and unstable space. She shook her head sharply at the warning icons, pointing to one symbol on the device and then to each sector in turn. Her meaning clear, even without the words. Whatever this thing was, it was tied to those places, and the council wanted it hidden, buried so deep no one would ever see it. Again the thought pressed against Rian's mind like cold weight. He remembered the judge's voice in the alien court, the way the sentence had been spoken without hesitation. Exile until death, no trial worth the name, no defense. And now he understood. It had nothing to do with some law she had broken. It was about what she had found, about this device, and about the fear of what might happen if others knew. She had not been punished for her actions. She had been silenced for her knowledge. Outside the wreck shifted, a faint vibration passing through the hull. Rion checked the radar and saw one of the alien ships drifting closer, scanning the shadows, their patience thinning. The girl saw it too, and her grip on the edge of the console tightened. Rian kept his movements slow, sliding his hand to the throttle, ready to break cover. She shook her head and instead reached for a small panel under the co-pilot's seat, pulling free a bundle of wires and metal. It looked like a crude beacon. She tapped the device against it, and the small machine came alive, sending out a thin, sharp signal in short bursts. The alien ship paused in its movement, as if hearing something unexpected, then turned sharply and moved away toward the far edge of the zone. Rian stared at her, understanding that she had just given them a distraction, but also that the signal might draw others. She leaned back in her seat, her breath slow, but her eyes never leaving his. And for the first time since core, she spoke a single word in human tongue, the sound low but clear: truth. Then she touched the device again, and the symbols lit faintly, showing a faint projection in the air between them. It was a map, but unlike any he had seen, made of lines of light that pulsed as if alive. In the center was a shape that seemed to shift every time he tried to focus on it. She pointed to it, then to herself, then to the sectors she had marked before, and finally to him. Rian felt the weight of that gesture, the choice she was giving him without saying it, to carry this truth with her or to turn away and pretend he had never seen. If the ship's sensors chirped, the alien fleet shifting again. 2 ships breaking from the net and heading toward the restricted zone, the time for choice shrinking fast. Rian looked at the girl, at the device in his hands, at the map that seemed to breathe. He thought of the cold court, of the silent crowd, of the frozen planet where she should have died. And he knew there was no turning away now. He leaned forward and keyed in a course toward the first sector she had marked, the girl's expression tightening with both hope and fear. The engines came alive, the wreck falling away behind them as they moved deeper into the unknown. The alien ships outside caught the movement almost at once, their signals bright on the radar, closing in fast. Rian pushed the engines harder, the girl bracing against the seat, the device still in her grip, the stars ahead seeming to stretch and twist. As they crossed into another region of dangerous space, whatever lay ahead was hidden from both human and alien records, and whatever truth she carried was powerful enough to make the galaxy itself feel smaller. But as the first flashes of enemy fire lit, The dark behind them, Rian felt only the steady weight of his choice, and the quiet certainty that this was a fight he would see through to the end. Asterisk. The stars changed as they crossed the invisible line, their light bending in strange ways as if seen through rippling water. The engines hummed with a deeper tone, and the air inside the cockpit felt heavier, as though they had flown into the lungs of some ancient creature. Captain Rian glanced at the readings, but most of the instruments flickered between numbers that made no sense. The alien girl stared ahead, her silver eyes unblinking, her hands gripping the device as if afraid it would vanish. The radar showed no ships behind them, though he knew the alien fleet had been close, and the silence felt wrong, too sudden. Too deep. A faint mist drifted through space ahead, glowing faint blue. It swirled slowly like the surface of a dreaming ocean. Rian slowed the ship. The mist was not on any chart. The girl raised a hand, shaking her head, pointing to the side, guiding him toward a narrow gap between two jagged fragments of rock, each one spinning slowly in the dark. As they passed between them, Rian felt the whole shiver, and a low sound like distant voices seemed to brush against his ears. He looked at the girl, but she was calm, her lips moving in a quiet chant, in her own language. The device in her lap pulsing faintly with the same rhythm. Asterisk. Beyond the rocks, the space opened into a hollow region filled with drifting debris. But it was not the wreckage of ships. It was pieces of stone and metal shaped into strange patterns, spirals and arches, some still faintly glowing as if from within. The girl leaned forward, pointing to one of the spirals, and for a moment, Rian thought he saw movement inside it, like shadows flowing through water. But when he blinked, the motion was gone. He adjusted the controls to steer closer, but the ship jerked sharply, the console flashing a red warning. Collision alert, yet there was nothing in their path. The girl reached out and disabled the alert with a firm touch. Gesturing for him to keep going, they moved deeper into the zone, and the shadows outside grew thicker, not from the absence of light but from something else, as though invisible shapes were moving between them and the stars. Sometimes the ship's lights would touch them, and they would shimmer for a heartbeat, revealing outlines that did not match anything Rian had ever seen, shapes with too many edges and curves that twisted in ways the mind tried to reject. He kept his eyes forward, focusing on the thin path the girl traced on the map. The device in her lap brightened suddenly, its symbols shifting into new forms, the projection above it showing their current location, and now the strange spirals of debris glowed on the map as well. The girl tapped one far ahead, her expression tense. Rian nodded, pushing the engines a little harder, the hull groaning as if resisting. The mist outside thickened until it pressed against the glass, swirling in slow motion, patterns forming and breaking apart like living things. In some he thought he saw faces, but each faded before he could be sure. Then, without warning, the ship jolted, alarms flaring, something massive passing close enough to shake them. Rian grabbed the controls, eyes scanning the radar, but the screen showed only empty space. The girl spoke sharply in her language, pointing to the left. Rian turned the ship, and for a moment the mist parted, revealing a colossal shape drifting silently, its surface covered in the same symbols as her device. The shape was not a ship nor a station, but something older, more like a monument, its size dwarfing even the largest carriers. It turned slowly in the dark, and as it turned, Rian felt a pressure in his head, a low hum rising through his bones. The girl pressed a hand to her chest, her expression somewhere between awe and fear. The monument's surface shifted as they passed, great panels sliding aside to reveal a dark opening, large enough for their ship to enter. The girl gestured urgently. Rian hesitated, but the pull in his mind grew stronger, like a silent voice calling them closer. He guided the ship forward, crossing into the shadow, the light from outside fading until only the glow of the device lit the cockpit. Inside the opening was a vast chamber, walls covered in moving light that flowed like rivers across the stone, forming and breaking apart into shapes and symbols. They landed on a flat platform at the center, the sound of the engines dying swallowed by the heavy silence. The girl rose quickly, holding the device high. The symbols on the walls shifted toward her, responding as if alive. She stepped forward, her voice steady as she spoke in her language, the light around them growing brighter with each word. Rian followed, his boots echoing on the stone, his eyes scanning the strange patterns, some of them matching marks on the device, others twisting into forms he could not understand. The pressure in his head grew sharper until he realized it was not pain, but a stream of thoughts not his own. A final pulse of light surged from the walls into the device, and the projection above it expanded, showing not just the Forbidden Zone, but many others across the galaxy. each glowing with the same strange symbols. The girl turned to him, her face lit with a fierce light, and spoke again in human tongue, her voice low but unshaken. Not forbidden, hidden. Rian looked at the map, at the network of places marked in the same way, and felt the truth settle over him. Whatever this was, it was not just a secret. It was a pattern woven through the galaxy itself. And now they were part of it. The light on the walls dimmed without warning, as if something outside had blocked it. The girl froze, her chant breaking off mid-word. The device in her hands flickered, and a low rumble passed through the floor like distant thunder. Rian turned toward the entrance, and saw the mist swirling faster, shadows moving through it, in unnatural bursts, as though the space outside had grown impatient. The radar showed nothing but the hum in his bones. Returned sharper, more urgent. The girl stepped closer to the platform edge, her eyes scanning the darkness, as if she could see through each. A sudden vibration rattled the hull of their ship, and a thin beam of light slashed across the chamber, illuminating them both. Rian knew that light. It was a scanning beam from the alien fleet. The ones it escaped it, swept over the platform and vanished. But in the silence after, came a deeper sound, the heavy thud of something docking on the outer hull. The girl's head snapped toward him, and she spoke quickly in her language, pointing toward the ship. Rian ran with her. The air inside the monument, feeling thicker with each step, as if the place itself did not want them to leave. They reached the cockpit just as the first tremor shook the hull. Something had latched on. The indicators showed a boarding clamp locked tight on their side. Rian powered the engines, but the ship groaned without moving. The clamp was holding them. The girl gripped the device tighter, the symbols on it shifting wildly. She slammed her hand down on a control panel on the wall near the hatch, and the whole platform beneath them shuddered. Outside, a deep grinding noise rose like stone scraping against stone. The docking clamp released with a sharp crack, and the ship lurched. Rian wasted no time pushing the throttle forward. The engines roared, and they shot toward the opening, the mist outside swirling violently, as if stirred by the sudden movement. Shadows darted in front of them, taking half shapes before melting away behind them. In the distance, more beams of light swept through the mist. But now they moved faster, crisscrossing the space as if searching for prey. The girl pointed sharply to the left, and Rian turned hard, weaving between spirals of glowing debris. Each spiral seemed to twist and stretch as they passed, sometimes reaching toward them. As if alive, the mist parted for moments, revealing glimpses of massive alien ships sliding through the zone, their hulls cutting through the shadows. Without slowing their movements, silent and precise, one of them turned, and a sharp burst of light shot from its side, missing them by only a breath. Rian rolled the ship narrowly, avoiding the beam, which sliced through a fragment of stone ahead, turning it to dust. The girl pressed the device against the console, and a new map formed its glowing lines, showing a path through the zone that curved tightly between clusters of strange shapes. Rian followed it without question, each turn bringing them close to objects that should have torn the hull apart. Yet each time the shadows around them shifted, letting them pass, as if the zone itself was helping them, or perhaps guiding them. The alien ships behind were not so lucky. Rian saw one slam into a twisting spiral, its hull bending and vanishing into the mist without a sound. They pushed deeper into the zone, the mist thickening again, until only faint points of light marked the edges of the path. The girl kept her eyes fixed on the device, her lips moving in another chant. The hum in Rian's bones grew louder until it felt like a second heartbeat. His hands tightened on the controls, every nerve alert. The alien fleet was still behind them, their lights cutting through the mist from every side. But now something else moved among them, shapes far larger than ships, gliding silently between the shadows, their outlines bending the space around them. One of the massive shapes drifted close enough for Rian to see its surface, a dark expanse covered in shifting symbols, identical to those on the girl's device. It turned slightly, and a pulse of energy swept through the mist, knocking one of the alien ships sideways like a toy. The girl glanced at Rian, and nodded once, her eyes fierce. She pressed a sequence on the device, and a deep tone filled the cockpit. The mist outside reacted, pulling back to reveal a thin tunnel of clear space ahead. Rian gunned the engines, the ship surging forward down the tunnel. The alien ships tried to follow, but the walls of the tunnel shifted, closing around them until the path was gone behind them. The hum in his bones faded slightly, though the urgency remained ahead. The tunnel curved sharply and ended in a sudden burst of open space, the stars visible again. The ship broke through into the clear void, and Rian could feel the weight in the air lift. The girl slumped into her seat, still clutching the device, her breathing heavy. Rian glanced at the scanners, which now showed the alien fleet still inside the zone, trapped, or perhaps unwilling to cross the invisible line they had entered earlier. He allowed himself a slow breath. The chase was over for now, but the way the girl was looking at the map told him this was not the end. The glowing points across the galaxy seemed brighter now, each one pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark Rian. Looked at the stars ahead, wondering how many more forbidden zones there were, and what waited in them, and though the silence now felt calm, he knew somewhere out there the chase would begin again.